So what is it about this creative marginalization?
Okay, first of all, creative is an aspect that's missing within disaster risk reduction right now. Creative is both an adjective and a noun. So that's the first concept of it, is to understand creativity as an adjective and a noun. An example of a creative is a commercial in your industry, your line of work. It's a creative, this display is a creative. It's got a message to it that goes out to people. A lot of times in disaster risk reduction, we concentrate on creatives based off of middle class or upper middle class perspectives, not addressing issues of marginalization. So the media is guilty of it. A lot of bureaucracies are guilty of it, and a lot of organizations were guilty of it. And when I was in the military, when I was in Iraq last year doing post-disaster reconstruction, I realized the importance of what's called civil military operations. And within civil military operations, I learned something called A-scope. Now, A-scope is where you overlap and you network. This is for a geographic area study. You have to network area, structures, capabilities such as public health, public education, public administration, emergency services, organizations, your private, public, nonprofit sectors, and you also have to look at persons. Now, a lot of times we forget, and then events. So I break it down to a concept, I call it faces, paces, and spaces within places. So when you're looking at geography, the places, you're looking at A-scope. You're making an assessment this way. This should be the standard for international disaster risk reduction. And this is what I'm trying to implement with social entrepreneurship, to start a pedagogy of creative marginalization, where we take people out of their environment, and we start a process called, which may be hard to see, act, flow. Now, with the act flow, we're going to assess a community's A-scope. We're going to use the pedagogy of creative marginalization, which is a concept of spatial concepts of bridging chaos or complexity theory, a concept of cultural awareness with Consciencial, which is Paulo Freire's pedagogy of the oppressed, as well as discussing postmodernism and the impacts of technology on our faces, paces, and places, associated with age, associated with different forms of marginalization. So we're discussing this, and then we decide we're going to take on the mission of disaster risk reduction to take care of the community. This is ACT. To do that, we're going to then have flow. So you take somebody that's a marginal, you take somebody that's a manager, you take a facilitator, and you triangulate in an offset environment. When they go to this offsite environment, they go back to their communities as leaders. So this is a facilitative leadership program of creative marginalization. Flow is facilitative dialogue, leverage technology, organize action, and weatherproof. Weatherproof, and what you do is then we have to measure it scientifically with the phases of an all-hazards approach and the all-hazards approach of comprehensive emergency management, mitigation, preparedness, response, recovery. Of course, mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery have different, these are the phases. And what you do is we'll go and we'll measure scientifically through social sciences people's creativity from both the manager side, the marginalization side, of the pedagogy of creative marginalization. And that's what I'm doing a poster presentation about on Thursday for a disaster-minded legislation and policy. Because unfortunately, a lot of policymakers are so embedded within their cultural comfort zones that it's hard to get out of that cultural comfort zone and really address issues of marginalization. And so you find yourself in this network, and then, but if you look at chaos theory, you realize that everything is interrelated, which is something that Alexander von Humboldt said, who used to be the second most famous geographer, one of the first people to bridge geography into scientific studies. Now I'd like to take it to the next level and approach it to cosmopolitanism and a hybrid that Clarence Briggs had wrote about, hybrid cosmopolitanism based off Immanuel Kant's philosophy, Franz Boas' anthropology, and develop it into W.B. Du Bois' cosmopolitanism of cultural awareness, to address issues of marginalization creatively.